This is In the Trenches, broadcast 26.
Welcome to In the Trenches, where entrepreneurs, artists, writers, designers, inventors, warriors, and leaders share their stories of doing the hard, creative work that impacts all of our lives. Let the journey inspire you to do something worthwhile, build something bold, and create your life's work. And now, your host, Tom Morkis.
So, Richard, thank you so much for being on the call with us today.
No, thanks for having us. Or me.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, Richard, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started at Abstract Magazine and how you became really the managing editor, but kind of what led you to that in the first place.
Okay. Well, me personally, I'm a writer. Or I've written pretty much all my life, and there was a point in my recent life, 4 years ago, where I really started pursuing my writing seriously. And it was through that there was some events held by a local literary journal called Bamboo Ridge. And through them, I met James Charisma. We had both won a contest that they had. They had a monthly writing contest for fiction. And I had won a few months. James had won, I believe, a few months. And the local newspaper, the Honolulu Advertiser, was doing a piece about Bamboo Ridge, because at the time they had their 100th issue. Or they were coming out the 100th issue, and they wanted to talk to some of the recent contest winners, too. So James Charisma and I had met at that event, and we kind of kept in touch via Facebook, for about a year or so, liking each other's posts and just commenting here and there. Never even hung out or called each other, but kind of kept each other in our spheres. And then out of the blue, I got a message from James one day saying, Rich, I'm starting a magazine. I'm looking for writers. Do you want in? And I said, absolutely. And that was very late December or very early January of, very early 2013 or very late 2012 when he reached out to me. And things just moved quickly from there. Our first issue came out in March. I wrote 2 pieces for that first issue. And James apparently was really thrilled with what I did. We had a good relationship through the whole writing process and the assembling of the magazine, and he asked me to take on, a few more duties. And so, that pretty much with the second issue and then the third issue, it just grew into, becoming managing editor and just helping pretty much with every step of the process, from beginning to end.
Sure. Okay, so tell us a little bit about Abstract then as, in general. It's a culture and lifestyle magazine for Honolulu. And there's a lot of remarkable things that I definitely want to get into, among them being like just its great design, and we'll dig into that in a little bit, and the fact that it's free, which kind of blew my mind when I was walking through and stopping at Morning Brew coffee shop and saw it on one of the stands there. And so that's all remarkable, but just tell us a little bit about the concept of the magazine itself. What is the point of it? Why does it matter?
Well, it's sort of twofold. I mean, one, it's, like you said, it is a lifestyle and culture magazine. We wanted to highlight the stuff that's going on the island and the islands in general. Some of our recent issues have touched upon things going on in the neighboring islands. But we just wanted to take an approach that some of the other magazines here aren't necessarily taking. Just kind of, I don't know, maybe targeting a niche, or maybe more accurately taking on a tone and an attitude that some of the other magazines, necessarily aren't. And not, for good or ill, but they do their thing, and we're trying to do something unique in that same realm. The other side of the equation is that what we're doing is, Abstract is part of this program called the Incubator, and that's Incubator with a K. And the Incubator can best be described as sort of a training platform for emerging designers. And that's sponsored in large part by the AIGA of Honolulu, which is an industry trade group that represents designers and provides support for graphic designers in general. So through the Incubator, AIGA members who are recent graduates or on the verge of graduating can pretty much sign up for for the incubator program to get hands-on experience. The problem that kind of emerged, and let me back up a little bit, our publisher, they do a lot of printing for graphic designers and graphic design firms. And what they were finding is you get a lot of these newer designers who are either working solo or, new with a firm. And what they were requesting, print-wise, was not necessarily what was really possible based on what they were given. And, it boiled down to lack of knowledge. Not bad, it was just they were inexperienced. So the publisher and another designer friend were kind of coming up with the idea of, wouldn't it be great if there was some sort of training ground for these new designers? So from that came the initial seeds for what became the incubator. Now, parallel to that, James Charisma, the editor-in-chief, he had taken over a local zine, a very grassroots effort from a mutual friend. And that had been about 2 years earlier than that. And he just couldn't really find a way to make it work as far as making it viable, getting the advertisers on board and, the printing costs. And just through the grapevine and people knowing people, he got connected with Matt, the publisher, and they figured, a magazine would be a great vehicle for these designers to get that hands-on training. And meanwhile, we've got the backing of a publisher, who can help us out. So that's a really lengthy way of explaining just the marriage of the two sides, though. It was just we had a magazine that needed a publisher and a means to get printed, and there was a design program that was looking for a vehicle, which became the magazine. So that's how the magazine started. And again, that was January of last year when the initial meeting started and first issue hit in March.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you did dig into the back end, because I was actually really curious about that, because one of the first things I did after I went through the first magazine that I got, that I picked up, was look at, how is this created? Who's responsible for this? Because, again, I was like, really, again, if anybody is listening to this from Hawaii, pick it up if you haven't already. And if you fly to Hawaii, go grab one. They're really cool magazines. Just the design is really beautiful. So I was like really curious, and I saw the incubator. I did some research online about that, and it's all really fresh and new. It seems like not like none of this stuff has been around for a while, and so I'm glad you kind of touched on that. So the incubator itself is actually something that hasn't been around for too long either.
No, not at all. I mean, it's I won't say it's a new concept in general, but it's a new concept here in Hawaii. To our knowledge, nothing like this has been attempted, and it's just a way of nurturing the next generation of designers. And pairing them with, experienced or even, emerging writers in their own right, just giving a platform for them to gain exposure and get, some practice in there too.
Right. But then beyond that too, you are, so yeah, you're getting design experience and all that. But I look at it and I'm like, this is, better design than most magazines or journals that I've come across. And so that's a testament to obviously the quality of people that you have working on it. But I wonder, that said, so you're creating a remarkable product. Like, it looks great, it feels great, and it reads great. Are people? But it sounded like the point of this was to get people experience in design and writing. Has that been the case? Like, this is pretty fresh and new, but have people landed jobs outside of Abstract Magazine already, or is there any intention to, or what?
Yeah, people have. Well, let me back up one more point that I forgot to mention when I was describing the incubator. These emerging designers are paired with mentors. And these are veteran designers who either have their own firms or have worked a long time in firms. And it's in their own best interest in helping nurture this new generation. So these new designers aren't going blind. They're having these mentors kind of guide them, either reining them in or pushing them and challenging to think outside the box. So there's that element. But yeah, a number of our designers have landed jobs, either freelancing gigs or positions with design firms and just other work. Speaking from my own experience as a writer, this is working on Abstract has been something I've been able to add to my writing portfolio. And, I'd like to think that it's helped land me some freelance gigs here and there. So, yeah, all around it's been benefiting, the writers, designers, and even the photographers, who are out there, again, getting exposure, and they can point to the magazine as pretty much a virtual resume, or a printed resume, I should say. They can say, look, this is what I've done.
Yeah. And that's one of I think the power in it is so this is interesting. So I have a small publishing company. It's digitally based mostly, but I think this is remarkable because, you're doing it, it's very focused on one area, Honolulu, and it sounds like you guys may or may not be expanding to other islands, but the point is it's still very locally based, and that's the vibe you get from it. And there's a lot of power in that, too, when you think about the fact that it's physical print and that it's free. You distribute it freely. Can you tell me about, I guess, the strategy behind that? Because I don't want to, assume something or put words into your mouth, but tell me about, what is the concept behind that? Why did you guys choose to make it physical? Why did you choose to give it away free? And why did you choose to focus it on Honolulu?
I'll hop around as far as the order of the questions.
Sure.
Why it's focused on Honolulu? That's pretty much where we are. We're writing about our own backyard. And it is meant to nurture, local designers, the students that are here, and, local writers. Logistically, I think it just makes things easier. But like I said, we did have at least one issue. We did cover a story that was taking place on a neighbor island, which was a neat experience. I wasn't involved with the story directly, but I know there were some phone and email interviews that took place there, and we did highlight a bird sanctuary in the Big Island for one story. And that might have been in that pink issue, the third issue you were describing earlier that you hadn't mentioned. Yeah. Let's see. As far as why print, again, because this was meant as sort of a training ground for the emerging designers. It was the experience that they were lacking, or I don't want to say they're lacking, but it was meant to give them experience in print design. Graphic designers, while it's an increasingly digital age, print is still a huge part of what graphic designers deal with. So this, again, was meant to be something concrete, something physical that they could generate, something they could work on, and better understand the mechanics of what happens between, their Photoshop and InDesign applications on screen to what's going to be spit out at the other end at the printer. So that explains why it's print, and it's got a long way to prove, I think, locally at least, that print's not dead. You've seen the product. It's amazing, and there's things we can do in that respect that probably wouldn't hold up as well on web or in any other medium. And I'm sorry, what was your first or your third question?
And then the third piece was why free?
Honestly, I couldn't answer that. That I think was ultimately a decision that was between James Charisma and our publisher Matt Heim. I think in part was just logistics. They just wanted a product that was out there. And I think just trying to figure out a way to charge for this and work out distribution just would have tangled things up more than we were probably ready to handle at the time. And I also, now that I'm thinking out loud about this, I have to wonder if it was something about the nature of the activity. Because we are training these designers. This is an educational component. So they're working for free, essentially. There's all these workshops and stuff we do at the incubator, so it's not like slave labor. I need to clarify. We are giving them an educational value, and this is one of the components. So I think that plays into it as far as why, it was free. But don't quote me. That's probably something I'd have to talk to James and Matt about on that. Yeah.
No, I know. I didn't probably prepare you for that question. I just was thinking of it, and the reason I bring it up is because. Kind of like I bring up the physical. So here's my thoughts on it, for what they're worth. Is I see it, I've come into this state, and I see, come to a coffee shop and I see this magazine. I would have paid for it, obviously, so maybe that's not the case with everybody. And I understand the concept of free will distribute quickly and faster that way. So I think that's great, to get it into the hands of people who will distribute it for you. So the coffee shops and other places that you probably give it out to.
Right.
It's really powerful. What I see, though, is really awesome is that combination of being physical and being local. Because in this age that everything is becoming more and more digital, I see that there's actually still quite a bit of power and necessity for physical print. But it just has to be done the right way for the right purposes. And I think Abstract Magazine exemplifies that in a number of ways. Because it's local, and because it's locally specific to that local market, you can highlight people in the community that are doing great things. You can give them a physical artifact of that, which is this magazine, which to me, from my mind, like it looks like it would be something like if I was there and I was highlighted in this, I would want to share it and I would want to spread it to people. So is that part of the philosophy that went into it too?
I'd imagine it was. Again, thinking out loud, and you caught me at the end of the day on our time, and you probably expressed it way more articulately than I could. But yeah, I mean, it is a very local-centric magazine. A big appeal is having that physical artifact, and it is a very much a local-centric magazine. So that what you described there is very much, I'd imagine, again, not having, picked James' brain on it, but I'd imagine it's a big factor of what went into the decision there.
And so, tell me a little bit about the distribution. How do you decide where you distribute the abstract magazine?
Okay, we try to be selective with where we distribute. On the one hand, the widest distribution would be ideal. We have a print run of about varies from like 3,500 to 5,000 copies per issue, and so we try to be a bit selective. We try to go to places where we think our audience is. We'll have some of the cafes, is a big component. Had a lot of the local cafes. Some of the bars, some of the trendier bars, some of the restaurants, some of the art workspaces, which are similar to incubators of sort, not kind of what we do, but the shared workspaces. There's a number here called, there's a few of them here, like Box Jelly, Inter-Island Terminal, things like that, where techies or artists can go and use the space and, we'll kind of display our magazines there. Whole Foods, of all places. But yeah, we try to be selective. There's so many places where we think we could, just delis and lunch places. But again, with a limited print run, we try to be a little more selective, in where we go. But the actual physical distribution is in part done by, for the first few issues, it was pretty much just James and I, and whoever else could help us. So we'd load up a bunch of boxes in the back of my car, and we would just go around the island, seeing if they'd be wanting to take any copies. We'd leave them a bunch. Fortunately, as people become more aware of us and we've developed a relationship, they're most of the places, the publisher, being that they are a printing company, they have their own fleet of vehicles. So they have their delivery drivers deliver to, I'd say, probably about 3/4 of the destinations. So they'll go out there and with each issue that comes out, they know where to go and who to drop them off to. And there's still a small group that we still reach out to directly for whatever reason, just the logistics of where they are or, how the magazine is placed. So James and I will still go door to door to a lot of these places and take a weekend out and deliver them. And we're always open to new requests too. So if somebody says, hey, how come you're not distributing at this cafe? Well, we'll reach out to the cafe and we'll make a visit. Or, we ran out of copies at that restaurant. No problem. We're on our way, and then we'll make a personal delivery to one of those places. So it's still very much a grassroots effort.
Sure. Well, I have one question, and you don't have to, name drop or anything like that. I'm not asking you to call anybody out. But on that first issue, when you were driving these around, did you actually get any no's? Did anybody turn down the opportunity to have these in their place of business or anything like that?
Actually, yeah. And not because they weren't necessarily interested. We came across two types of no's. One was the skeptical, I don't know, I'll have to check with my manager. Just because we were a new, untested name, they didn't know if there was a catch. It's like, we have to explain again. It's like, no, this is free. You don't have to do anything. The stack just stays there and you don't have to do anything. Which often people would get after a while, but, some people were still hesitant or just outright refused. Or management never got back to us. But that was a very small minority. The other types of no's were, we tried to get our magazines in certain, without name dropping, but one or two chain cafes, which, are very well known throughout the world. So we tried to display our magazines there at those two different chains. Okay. And they both said no because it was against corporate policy, which we were understanding of. It was out of their control, so we didn't. So that's another reason why we stick to the smaller cafes. Just the real local ones.
Yeah, it fits the theme of the magazine, though, and the purpose of the magazine, though, pretty well, I think.
I'd agree, yeah.
Sure. And I'm going to ask you one more broad hypothetical that
sure.
is really unfair, but I just need to. Something like this, I look at it, and again, I don't expect that you could really answer this, but because I've never seen this anywhere else, but maybe I haven't been paying attention to it throughout the States, but I'm going to start looking out for it. I wonder, has this been tried? Like, was this idea something that has been tried before in other parts of the United States? And if not, why hasn't it been? This is really broad and really hypothetical, so, as much as you want to say on that, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, to our knowledge, this hasn't been done elsewhere, but again, it's just our surface level knowledge, because I think we've kind of talked about this internally just amongst ourselves. Not saying, I'm sure there's other incubator type projects or some sort of training ground programs, for emerging designers, but to our knowledge, there's not one that produces a magazine. Whether to produce a website or some other type of media or product, we can't say for sure. But to our knowledge, this, if it's not unique, it's one of very few that are out there. But again, we haven't heard of any others that are out there.
Yeah, well, I just immediately when I saw it, I was like, this seems like something that, and the beauty of it is that it's non-competitive in terms of if I thought to myself, well, other cities should do this, other towns should do this, because it's locally based, it's not like in and of itself that concept would be a competitive thought. It would be that I really wish certain other cities and in localities would have something like this. It's just a really cool artifact of the city itself too. Because I look at this, I'm like, oh, that reminds me of Honolulu, and that's really cool.
No, thanks.
So. Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about then the design process that goes into these journals and the writing and the articles. What's that process like from start to finish to ship? How do you guys come up with your ideas? How do you put it all together? It's, again, a broad scope, but how do you do that?
Well, we each issue we have is themed, which I don't know if you got from the one issue that you picked up, but each issue, we're a quarterly magazine, and we'll come up with the themes at first. Our first issue, fittingly enough, was called First Friday. And First Friday here in Honolulu is it's a monthly event that takes place on the first Friday of the month in our Chinatown area. And it's sort of an arts festival. All the local vendors and the galleries, kind of show their wares. Sometimes it takes the form of a street festival, a block party, depending what's going on at the time. In fact, our first issue, the first Friday, kind of coincided with Chinese New Year last year. So anyway, that issue ended up being sort of a celebration, First Friday, and sort of a focus on Chinatown. So that theme kind of played into the issue, and I'm rambling and going way off the main point, but we start with the theme. Yeah. From the theme, we'll kind of generate ideas of what topics will fit into this theme. For example, our last issue is called Intrigue, and it's a very broad term, and intrigue can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. So we kind of use that flexibility to cover a wide range of topics, as we did with our First Friday issue, our Chinatown issue. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So with our Intrigue issue, our fourth issue, we covered a story about secret societies in Hawaii, along the lines of the Masons. We did a piece about ghost stories. We did a piece about old myths and legends in the area. We did another piece about ruins that people may have seen on the roadside or that are hidden deep in the woods here in Hawaii, but maybe have not known about. So anything that was sort of intriguing, mysterious, hidden history, or sort of had a creepy, eerie factor to it. So we'll just kind of, amongst ourselves, the editorial team, we'll just kind of run down some different story topics that might work within that framework. And we'll start pitching those to some of our writers. And the writers are welcome to come back with their own pitches or their own variation on the concept that we pitch to them. And once they get those stories going, they'll write them. We'll give them a deadline. We'll go through the editing process of the story, getting it down to the proper word count or working back and forth with the writer to kind of clarify facts or, make the content clearer. Meanwhile, the design side, the AIGA, they're recruiting the new crop of designers, and they'll recruit a new crop for each issue, just depending on who's available, school schedules, and whatever else is going on, as well as recruiting new mentors. Once the stories are done or on the verge of being done, they're assigned to the respective designers or the design teams, which again, it will be one emerging designer and one mentor designer who's a veteran. And they'll work on that. The photographer comes on board somewhere in between. If it's a time-sensitive story, meaning like if I'm covering a story that only takes place, Tuesday to 24th, I need to have a photographer there with me when I'm covering the story. Some stories might be more flexible, and the designer can either reach out to a photographer, to take shots that they think would fit their design. Maybe they'll just go with illustration, or maybe they'll take another approach. So we'll give them that flexibility to see what they want to work with, if they want to work with photographers or not. They'll go through that phase. They'll get their layouts done. And what we have is, we don't have an official name for it, but I guess it's kind of a design meeting or a critique meeting where all the designers will present their layouts to the staff. And this is part of the educational component where we'll post them all on the wall. The writer will take a moment to explain the concept behind their story. Then the designer gets up and explains the concept behind their design. And the other emerging designers and the mentors will kind of get a chance to look at it, offer their feedback. It's not meant to be critical or not, too critical. We're not grading them necessarily. We're just looking at it, and giving feedback saying, maybe if it was a little more this or you did a great job. Based on the feedback from that, another valuable component of that actually is they get to see what the page spread next to them is looking like and what the page spread before them. If it looks too similar, they can tweak it, or us as the editorial team, maybe we'll decide to shift stories around. But after that meeting, they've got a few days, maybe 4 or 5 days to tweak their designs. Final designs go in. We've got usually a small window to proof it, the editorial team. Look for any typos. Look for any things that maybe didn't show up on the proofs, but now are showing up, in these markups we're looking at. We also have one of our editors is a scholar of the Hawaiian language, so he can look for okinas, any of the diacriticals for the Hawaiian language that most of us wouldn't be able to catch, but he knows the language in depth, so he's able to make sure we're culturally appropriate, throughout. And depending on the timeline, it always seems like the timeline's shrinking, but we'll crank that out as quick as you can, and then we just go to print.
Yeah, and then do you guys use a locally based printer as well?
That's our publisher, Matt Heim. He actually runs a major printing company. Him and his brother. It's called Han Blue, and one of the brands in that family of companies is called Electric Pencil. And Electric Pencil is the brand that their major client base is the graphic designers. So Electric Pencil does the printing for this. So they do all the printing here locally, which is very helpful as far as not having to, deal with somebody in Seattle, for example, or Canada, and having to ship anything. It's all right here. So, and we've actually had print runs down to the wire, like our first issue. Actually, most of our issues we don't see until our launch party. It's like, the launch party's today at 5, and it's like, okay, well, here's the box, so
that's cool.
We'll pop it open, and so it's a surprise.
Yeah, so I guess why, since, again, it started off, it's still really fresh, it's still a really young magazine, why commit to a quarterly versus some other printing schedule? Is that too tight? Is it just the right amount of time? Why quarterly?
I think it's just the right amount of time. I think, one of the things with our magazine is, unlike most major magazines, they may have, a handful of writers on staff, a creative director and 1 or 2, maybe 3 designers. So it's a much easier crew to manage. We are coordinating here at Abstract, for the most part, 1 writer per story and 1 design team per story. So minimum 3 people, anywhere from 12 to 18 stories per issue. And that's not including the design of the table of contents, the masthead, and all that stuff. So It's quite a chore. It's a lot of people to coordinate. It's a lot of moving pieces. So quarterly works out just right. If we had to do this monthly, it would drive us insane, probably. But at the flip side, I think quarterly is just enough frequency that it's going to be fresh in people's minds and they're going to get excited about it versus an annual where you might forget about it or something that's twice a year. Quarterly, it's fresh enough that it's still in people's, radar. And it'll keep them looking forward. It's like, it's only 3 months to the next issue, and, there's a lot of stuff to be done with that in between.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's a great, good publishing timeline. It's solid, especially when you're, producing this kind of quality. It's excellent. So you did mention that you went through kind of the whole process, and I appreciate the detail personally, and I know listeners will too, because it's just interesting to see, to think about when you see something like this, you see a finished product, you wonder, at least I wonder, what goes on behind the scenes to make something like this happen. Maybe not everybody wonders that, but I do, and I'm always curious how much effort goes on behind the scenes and how much. So what you just said there, the number of personnel that's working on this is really incredible, and the amount of collaboration that goes back and forth to design every issue, that's pretty remarkable. Mm-hmm. So I guess going forward, what do you guys do? You have any major plans with this, or is it an experiment that may stop, or is it something that you see going on in perpetuity, forever, or until it dries up sometime, years later, or it goes on forever? Is there any plans, you know what I mean? Is it experimental, or is it, is there a timeline on it, or is it just as long as it's successful, keep doing it?
Well, it's definitely an experiment, but it's not, as far as we're concerned, it's not a finite experiment. We like to take this for as long as we can take it. As far as plans, keep on printing, obviously, maintain this quarterly thing. We're always finding new, every issue. I described our workflow, but every issue, the workflow changes, adjusts. For one issue, we'll say, well, what if we don't do that? And then we'll find that it doesn't work, so we'll reinstate that for the following issue, or, vice versa. Things are always changing, so I can't say we found our groove just yet. This is not a well-oiled machine, which is not to say we're tripping over each other, but it's just there's always new challenges. But we have been, I don't know if you were aware, but we did win, there's a local awards program for graphic designers called Hawaii's 5-0, just sort of a play on the show, but it came out before the show's reboot a few years ago. But it's recognizing the 50 best designs in the island or the state. And, graphic design firms from all over submit their work, and they pick the top 50 and they honor them at a awards banquet. Out of those top 50, they recognize the top 5. And we were blessed and fortunate to have Abstract be a top 5 winner for 2013. So that's the momentum we're hoping to take with us. It's very flattering and very endearing to be recognized by the local design community as being that good and being that valuable and integral to the design community. So we're hoping that's some goodwill that'll help take us further. We have talked about a web component. We don't have a website. We've got our Facebook page and a Twitter feed, and we are looking to develop a web component where we want to do something different. We don't want to just reprint what we have in our magazine online, only because that would be too simple and, we don't have enough on our plates already. But we're looking at sort of recreating an incubator for the web component. So while we're giving these emerging designers print experience for the print magazine, we're trying to see if there's a way we can tap into another crop of emerging designers that are looking for experience in web design. So in theory, if everything works out and we do this, you'll pick up the print edition and you'll have one version of the story design-wise, and then if you go online, there'll be another version, another design for that story, and we're still working out the logistics. That's a whole other slew of moving parts and, potential nightmares. But, we've got that on board, and, just keep pushing forward. Everybody on board here is really excited about what we do. We'd like to see what else we can do. as beautiful as that issue that you picked up looked, we're looking at trying to experiment new techniques with the print, with the covers. The first year was all neon covers. You picked up the hot pink. Our fourth issue was a neon blue. First issue was a shocking green. And then we had a really bright orange for our second issue.
Yeah.
And I don't know how knowledgeable you are with printing or paper techniques, but I mean, you could see the issue you had. I mean, it was textured, and there was different things going on with the cover design. And so we're looking at pushing that envelope further too. So for future issues, so it's not just a matter of changing the color of the covers. We're going to see what other, as much as we're pushing the designers, we'd like to see how much we can push the print component too, just to show off. Here's what else print can do. Here's what's available out there. So.
Yes, and are you a big part of that too? Then, because I mean, obviously, as an editor, I mean, since it's for physical print, I assume that you work with the printers pretty closely. Is that true?
To a limited degree. As collaborative as this is, there are also I'm trying to think of a word for it. I mean, I don't want to say divisions because that sounds like a negative thing, and it's not. But the writers and the editorial team, we take care of our content. The designers take care of their content. The publisher and the creative director are focused more on the cover design. And we do all have a say, and we look at each other's work, but compartmentalize is the term I was looking for.
Sure.
And yeah, so for the most part, the editorial team will handle the content and the coordination between design and writing, and the cover design and the color choices, things like that, for the most part, comes under the purview of the creative director and the publisher.
Okay, gotcha. And so I'm guessing you guys are probably I did notice that because I thought the cover was pretty cool here, and you do a lot of it seemed like textured cover and stuff like that. So you guys will be pushing the bounds in that respect then too, huh? Mm-hmm. Trying to do new different techniques. Okay, cool. Yeah. No, that's exciting. How does this magazine? I guess a couple final questions I want to ask.
Sure.
How does this magazine now, because it's a culture and lifestyle magazine in Honolulu, what has been the reaction from the local population and specifically kind of the people that you highlight in here, the local businesses or local individuals that you highlight? What's the reception been from them on this initiative and this magazine? We've
been fortunate to hear nothing but good things. Like I said, we don't have a website. We've just got our Facebook presence, but I mean, as I'm sure you're well aware that on Facebook and other online venues, if people think you suck, they'll tell you that you suck. And we've been fortunate that we haven't had that. I mean, pretty much everybody's been praising what we do. Everybody loves us from what we've been hearing. I think the closest to a complaint, if you can even call it that, is how come you don't have your magazine in restaurant X or cafe C, and wondering, how come we're not distributed more widely? How come they can't get their hands on an issue? But, it's a good thing. I mean, it's coming from a good place. They want the magazine. So
yeah, those are good complaints to have.
Yeah. But I mean, the response has been overwhelming. Like I said, through our Facebook and Twitter, people have been praising us. I told you about that award we won. And then it's day-to-day life when you meet people and they're like, "Oh, you work for Abstract," and they'll just unprovoked, but they'll just start going on about how much they love Abstract, and it's been a great response. Even the other magazine publishers recognizing what we're doing as far as nurturing this new breed of designers. They're really supportive of what we do, and we try to work with them and however we can. Just either the publishers supporting each other, the writers, designers, and all that. And a lot of the design mentors that we have work on some of these major magazines. So we all feed each other. We all help each other out. It's been very supportive.
That's awesome. So I guess we'll just finish it up here. Is there any way that people can get in touch with you or with Abstract? I know you mentioned they don't have a website. You guys kind of have a website. I think as a way to you highlight a couple of your magazines. You can't get them digitally, but it looks like you can email somebody to buy a copy or something like that.
That's a good point. Yeah, we did put up a website just so we have something on a website, but yeah, there is a means that people can order back issues. When the new issue hits, we are free, but for back issues, because it is a limited print run, we do charge for the back issues. So there is that website, which, my goodness, I should know this. I believe it's abstracthawaii.com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe it is. And I'll have that all linked up in the show notes.
Okay. And then our email address, our best way to get in touch with any of us, and myself personally, is abstracthawaii@gmail.com. So any inquiries they may have, any questions, compliments, complaints, even, we'll welcome complaints, and, reach out to us via email. And again, through our Facebook, facebook.com/abstracthawaii, Twitter @abstracthawaii. So...
It's wonderful. Well, Richard, I really appreciate you taking the time today and giving us a little behind-the-scenes look at the making of Abstract, really. I think you guys are doing remarkable stuff, so keep it up.
No, thank you very much. Thanks. And, again, appreciate you reaching out to us and appreciate you scheduling me to, tell you what we're all about.
Thank you for listening to In the Trenches. Your creative work doesn't stop here. Join the Resistance, the small but growing army of entrepreneurs and artists putting a dent in the world at www.tommorkis.com. Never fight alone. Join the Resistance.